So today on Face to Face, we are interviewing world-class set designer Jack Flanagan. I hope you enjoy it. So I want to start off with very simple. How did you get started in this industry?
I went to Central St Martin's, which is an art college in London, and I did theatre design. I kind of fell into doing theatre design. I went to college thinking I might do fine art painting, but I discovered there was all these other courses you could do and all these other things you could do, and I had some friends who were in theatre design, and I used to go and visit them in their studios, and it was just like entering into kind of like Willy Wonka chocolate factory or something. It was amazing. They just had all these crazy projects going on all the time, and visually it was all like really striking and interesting, and so during my foundation course I thought, okay, I'll do theatre design instead. Well, I left art college in June '96. I had been assisting for 3 years already, all the whole time while I was at college. And then I started to work with some friends of mine who were like in the year ahead of me at St Martin's, and they were starting doing some commercials and music videos and things like that. Started working with them, assisting them. Slowly started doing my own little bits and pieces, and when I left college I was doing small scale kind of like commercials or music videos and a little bit of like theatre design with some friends. I never even knew at the time you could do set design for fashion. Yeah, I had some very good friends out here, and they were all encouraging me to come and visit, and one of the theatre designers that I was assisting was doing a musical on Broadway. It's not really his visual aesthetic, but it was just kind of like he was cashing in basically to make some money. And he had an apartment, 2 bedrooms, and I came out here and stayed with him, and while I was out here I brought my portfolio, and just to see if anything would happen. Maybe call it the American dream, maybe call it just being in the right place at the right time with the right work, who knows. But I suddenly met a producer, and she said that they were looking for some set designers, and did I have a book, and I showed her my book. She really liked it, and then she said, do you have any more time? Because I'd like to take you next door to show your portfolio to this man in an advertising office next door. And I was like, sure, yeah, no problem. And I'd shown my portfolio to probably 500 people in England by this point, and everybody had said, we love your work, we'll call you, and I've never ever heard from them again. So I go next door into this office, and there's a man in there, and I say hello, and I go through my book with him, and he says, wow, I really love your stuff, and love to do some work together, and, we'll call you, kind of thing. And I walked out of there thinking I was never going to hear from these people again. And then I had a pager back in those days, and I remember getting a page, and it was the woman I'd initially met. And she said, you're not going to guess what happened? And I said, what? She said, Stephen Meisel wants you to do the D&G campaign.
Shut up.
It's true. And that person the second person I went in to see was Raul Martinez, who was Stephen's he was right-hand man and creative director at that point, and was on all of his shoots, giving him all those ideas. So,
did you know who Steve Meisel was at this point?
I had a very vague understanding of him from like the Madonna sex book, which had only come out like a couple of years before, and he had a lot of exposure with that. Anyway, we ended up shooting D&G, and then just started from there, really.
That's insane.
He was the first photographer I worked with, and we worked together for about a year or a year and a half, and then a few years later we did like a 4-year run as well.
Amazing. What a lucky start.
Amazing. It's totally lucky. I know. Very, very lucky, very grateful. But we did a kind of a solid year together, and then I started working with Mario Sorrenti and did like a 5-year run with him, and in that time I was starting to work with Tessino as well.
In this industry, people can jump from people to people to people, but it seems like you get in there and then you stay there for a good stint.
Yeah, well, I guess so. That's nice for you to notice, and it's nice to think about. But I guess I always try and give, like 220% the whole time, and
220?
220%.
Okay.
More, 250%, 300%, who knows? But I always try and bring as much as I can to the table, basically, as many ideas and as many different kind of concepts, and I think people appreciate that, really.
A lot of people, I think, they think that the photographer has to come up with everything, or the client comes and says, this is, we need this chair, this table, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's so important for set designers to come with an idea of their own, and also to be able to sort of take an idea and then expand upon it, which you do amazingly. I mean, I ask you for a chair, and you come up with
300 chairs.
A warehouse of studying theatre design must have been, it's a huge benefit to your job.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I can't complain about it at all. I think it set me up perfectly to do the job, and I think that's maybe why sometimes why I get hired, is I come from this sort of theatrical kind of fine art background sometimes, where you can tell there's like a lot of references that have happened and things like that, and we studied a lot of the whole history of drama as well as part of the theatre design course, and I found that doing on fashion shoots sometimes, obvious kind of like drama references might be popping up sometimes in terms of anything from like the pose through to like the mood or something like that. I guess, whether it's a Brecht play or whether it's a Strindberg play or whether it's a Martin McDonagh play or something like that. You know, they all kind of bring different atmospheres and moods, and people, especially in fashion, they're constantly looking for like a new idea to sort of get onto and kind of work through, because as I was saying in the beginning, so much has already been worked through to death. So I think any new angles people like.
I'm very curious to know who are your go-to references. I mean, I'm sure you get references from everywhere, but do you have any sort of like core favorites that you've always gone back to?
Go-to references? I mean, it really depends job for job. I mean, often easy go-to references are to look at things like Helmut Newton or something like that.
I feel like Helmut Newton references were all around, like, say, 5 or 6 years ago, when it was that sort of Merton Marcus, sort of the sexual content, the very strong woman, the powerful woman.
Right.
So where do you think references have gone now? I mean, where do you feel like the mood has gone now?
There was definitely a moment when you saw a lot of photographers were making a big impact at that moment, were wanting to use like very natural situations, just kind of like shoot outdoors using the setting sun or the rising sun and that kind of stuff. And from a set design point of view, it might just be something literally found on the street that they'll kind of bring in front of you. So there's definitely been this very sort of naturalistic feel that's been happening or was happening a number of years ago.
Right.
I think it's, as far as I can tell, it seems to be getting back into building some bigger sets still from there. But there was a period when it was definitely, you know, even though I turned up to work, I felt like I wasn't putting in as much input as I would have liked to or would normally do, because the photographer was very much wanting to just strip everything back, and almost like the Lars von Trier sort of dogma for fashion photography. It was like a very much, let's use found lighting, let's use found props.
But in 22 years, you must have seen the wave of gone from...
Oh, definitely, yeah. There's definitely been things that, from a set point of view, things have been like very set heavy. Like when I started, things were very set heavy. And then there was suddenly a period when it suddenly went to be very much white sack background, and I felt for about a couple of years I was just bringing almost like the same 15 chairs and stools to a shoot.
All right. Who was your favourite photographer? It's tough to pick a photographer, but of all the greats you worked with, who was your favourite one in terms of set and in terms of freedom or in terms of creativity for set?
I mean, I've got to say, the first person I worked with, Meisel, was an amazing one for that, because he really, out of any other photographer I worked with, he encouraged collaboration as much as possible. Like, you know, where he wanted input from everybody on the team, and then he would put it all together and sort of turn it to kind of like magic soup, and then suddenly it looked incredible as a final image.
So if a young Jack Flanagan came to you and asked you advice, what would you tell him?
I guess, you know, just keep your head down, keep trying to generate ideas and all of that, and you know, don't have a fear that your last job is always going to be, you know, you may never work again after your last job, but in a way treat every job as if it might be your last job, because then, you know, you're giving your best to the table and the image and everything else, and then ideally, if you've already got a relationship with whoever, whichever photographer or something, it'll just like continue on. But I guess, you know, don't ever sit on your laurels, I guess, is one thing. Assisting is key when you're at a time that you can afford to be doing it, when you're at college or something like that. Don't just, you know, let your college years go by if you're doing that, and then suddenly come out and expect to be handed a job, because it's probably not going to happen.
So is there anything that you'd wish you'd known when you started in this business?
I think I'd like to tell myself to, the life of a freelancer is like you're constantly sort of beset by worries that you might never work again after your last job or something like that. And I think I would tell my younger self that don't worry about that, because there's so many jobs going on with so many different people working, that it's always going to be very unlikely that you're never going to work again after your last freelance job. And that's something I even have to remind myself today. If I'm not working for a short period of time, it's always, you know, going to come back, and things are always going to happen. So don't waste any time, I guess, worrying about whether you're going to work again or not. More use the time to prepare yourself for when you might be working again. Get some references together, get some skills together, crew up, get a better crew up, all that kind of stuff.
I think it's very good advice. I think really, really important advice is, and it took me a while to learn that, is whenever I had a day off, I would spend the whole day worrying, and also not enjoying your days off.
Yeah.
Because then when you're working,
not like a holiday or anything, you're just like pacing.
Right. Because then when you're working and you're working for a month straight, you're thinking, oh, I wish I had a day off. And then you have a day off and you start worrying about working again.
Yeah.
But I think it's hugely important to really sort of use any time you have, like you said, to research and because I think, as you said, jobs come in at the last minute nowadays. So you want to be kind of like staying loose in limbo and anything's ready. So people have come to me and says, we need to shoot next week. Do you have any ideas? and you immediately just go,
Yeah,
there you go.
you need to be ready to roll, basically.
Very important.
And my younger self would have liked to have thought that I would be a fine art painter by now.
Right.
But I don't think I'm certainly not disappointed that didn't happen, because I feel I can bring a lot of that into what I'm doing now, and in the end I'm almost like painting with 3D, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I am very, very happy with my job, and I feel very lucky about it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more face-to-face interviews, then you can click here or subscribe somewhere around here.